Hello, fellow co-creators. Welcome back to Seeds of Elegance. Today, it is just me on this platform. This is the ninth episode in this series, and it's a time to uplift creative revolution, which is the part of my work that has been birthed through this process. We're going to try to contain this episode in 30 to 40 minutes. If you follow me or know me or receive voice notes from me, you know that uh, simplicity is not my strong suit, but it is something we're working on here. So thank you for being present and listening to this at a time when you want to expand and explore and play with confusion. All right, let's take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Two more in through the nose. Grounded in the earth. Exhale. Connected to the cosmos. Exhale. Open in the heart. Exhale. Seeds of Elegance is a platform to talk about personal, collective, community, and systems change. Typically on this platform, I interview other people about a seed that is within them. It might have been nurtured through their life experience, or it might have been channeled or offered to them in their life. And it's something that they are seeking to plant in our collective and have it grow into something else. Seeds of Elegance is a place where we can work with both ands. And I was on a call yesterday with someone who asked me to expand on that. Since my Substack Creative Revolution, I use the phrase both and on there. So I'll just briefly say that both ands means being able to hold that this is a physical cup, and also at its root is still energy. And I'm not going to expand more into that at this exact moment, but both ands in this space means spirituality and science, the social, political, and the spiritual, energetic, emotional, and not making, then there's a bunch of others, but those are the two main ones I look at. And I don't want to say not making a conflict out of, but inviting perspective that says where I'm tempted to say it's either or, I choose to recognize duality. Right before recording this, a good friend of mine who's been, well, I call a lot of people good friends, a person who lives in the Netherlands, who I've had one Zoom call with and other exchanges with, sent me a post that they're working on. And there was an image of a cylinder, and the shadow being reflected on one wall was a square, and the shadow being reflected on another was a circle. The side view and the front view of the cylinder. And there was a line of writing on the wall saying, let's just pull up this article really quick. You know what? No, but truth. The truth is actually, this is true. That's what it was. On one wall, this is true with the square on the wall. The shadow that's a square. This is true with the shadow with the circle. And this is truth, which was a cylinder. And truth is not a cylinder, but this is the concept of both. And we see what we see. We hold the tail of the elephant and we think I'm holding a rope, but we don't see that it's an elephant. Okay, that is both ands. Thank you for letting me get that out. This is a show. This is a space that grapples with both and. And today, we're going to get into my seed of elegance. It's juicy. It's joyful. It's good. I want to bring that first. It's joyful. I know we're at a time right now where there's a lot of energy moving through the air, and a lot of that energy is feeling sticky and heavy and dark, and it's not just energy. And my seed, the channel that I have been connected with, that I choose to nurture, has to do with joy. And that is what I want to start with. Joy. Joy. Please get a notebook if you don't have a notebook, something that you can journal with. Because when I do Seeds of Elegance, this is what I say. I write the seed, I write the thing that a person is working on. Okay. Unleash your sexuality with Victoria Amore. Challenge the gatekeepers with Anusha Suresh. And by the way, the work of Victoria Amore, the work of Anusha Suresh, it might continue to grow. It will continue to grow for the next X many years, right? But there's a seed. No matter what, Anusha's work is always going to have to do with challenging the gatekeepers. No matter what, Victoria's work is always unleashing a new level of our sexual energy that we're not yet attuned to collectively. So I write their seed and then I say with Victoria Amore, with Anusha Suresh. Today, this is with your guidance system. Yes, it's me, Libby, the host of this show, speaking to you. But the width of creative revolution and activating your teacher within is coming at you from your guidance system. So I'm going to be speaking, but we are going to set the tone for your guidance system being present. If you listen to Abraham Hicks, she sometimes uses the phrase our internal guidance system. If you listen to Mama Gina, who is a sexuality coach, she sometimes uses the grand pussy in the sky to symbolize the great energy of pussy that is also your own system if you are a female, and that she calls your GPS. So that's what we're working with today. Your GPS, your internal guidance system. I'll give you a little exercise on that. But that's what I want to start with. Pause, be excited. This is you. This is your session. This is your space. I'm going to tell a little bit of my story. It's still going to be about you. It's going to be about me. It's going to be about you. It's going to be about us. And we might find each other in the middle. All right. So let's start with the internal guidance system, and then I'll give some stories and things that have led me here. And then we'll pause because this episode is the beginning of a book that I'm writing. And I hope and pray and anticipate many less words and much more clarity in this expression. But we got to start with something, as you will find out in Creative Revolution. So let's begin to activate your internal guidance system. And what I mean by that is I'd like you to think about a couple of, we'll meditate in this for a moment. Meditate, you can do eyes open, eyes closed, depending on what you're comfortable with. And if you have a pen and paper, I would love for you to just notice a couple of moments where you've made a drastic change in your life. And it might not have been like you divorced your husband, but it might be like you left that table that your mom was sitting at while she was insulting you. Or you didn't go into your job to the meeting that you had to and you were supposed to, like any place where you were challenging your own rule book for how things ought to be, not just making a decision that other people see. So let's take a minute with that. 1 or 2 or 3 situations where that happened. Okay, the lesson is done. That's it. I actually want to turn off the camera, but I know where I'm going with that. So how do you feel when you see those? How do you feel when you look at those moments where something in you is like, no, 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 not anymore. The fact that I'm singing right now when I've made so many videos where I'm full on crying is like, yeah, this is the reminder. Okay. So for me, there's mystery, curiosity. There's also joy and elation. And when I've been in a stage of life where I don't yet trust that, there's anger, frustration, fear, non-self-trust. But today I'm at a place where I do trust that system. And so that's what we're going to uplift today. We're uplifting this part of you. I remember listening to a podcast a couple of years ago from someone who was reflecting on the Me Too movement, which is a huge part of my work as well. And not that I right now am proactively working on the Me Too movement, but I come with gratitude toward this movement, which we'll get into in a moment as well. But I remember listening to this podcast and this woman was like, I need to be in my no era. And she's like, she listed a whole bunch of commands that you might hear, like get in your downward dog, exit the train, do whatever. And she's just like, no, 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 no. And at that time in 2019, when I was listening to that episode, Walking Up a Hill in San Francisco, I thought, ew, I don't want to be in that no energy. In fact, I love more and resonate more with, if you've ever listened to Shonda Rhimes, the wonderful founder of Shondaland and author of or producer and writer of Grey's Anatomy and Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and many of these massive dramas. She has spoken about a yes experiment that she did in her life, where she was for a year just saying yes to things because she's like, I designed these amazing sets and characters and things that people resonate with. Then they meet me and they think, oh, you must have a very dramatic life. And she's like, no, but all these characters are just living in me. And then she went through a phase where some people close to her were saying, you always turn down, you get invited to things with the president, you get invited to things, I don't know, these major events, and you turn them down. And so she decided to have this year of yes. So that's what I want to start with, this energy of yes and this energy of no. Both of them can help activate your guidance system. But you can imagine and remember potentially that more of your guidance system might have come in one or the other. So for me right now, because of the phase that I'm in, all of my guidance system moments that I wrote down were like hard no's, no, no, no. But it's also been a very important phase when I've been in a stage of I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. I'll get into that. And then it's also been for me, I'm more of a yes person. I grew up though with more psychological and physical safety than most people. So I don't mean to say than most people, but because I work in trauma healing right now, I many times introduce myself as, hi, I grew up in a stable home because it's important to honor that. I have been on a journey with trauma healing, and the more you learn about childhood psychology, the more that you also learn compassion and compassion for others, compassion for yourself, and awareness of how much our childhood experiences shape us. So it's very possible that the psychological and emotional safety of my past created that yes atmosphere for longer for me. Regardless, you can do a pause moment here again. Can you remember or think about phases of life where you had a big no energy come out, a big yes energy come out, and a big I don't know, or I've changed my mind, or I'm not sure yet happen? Okay, maybe some things are buzzing. I will give some examples of my life, and then, we're going to use this to just uplift and enlighten your internal guidance system. And enlighten, I don't mean as, oh, get out of your body. I mean, literally like lighten the load a little. We're going to just say, hey, you're welcome here. You're welcome. So 2019, I'm walking in this hill in San Francisco thinking, I don't want to be in this no energy like this woman. And that is the genuine phase that I was in. At the age of 23, I was still in a place where I thought no's they feel rejecting. They feel protective. They feel like pushing out. And I want to be in an energy of inviting in and welcoming. My I don't know phase began with my brother's death, which would happen a couple months after that phase, where I was still like, why does this girl need to talk about no's so much? my brother's death began in I don't know phase to a degree that I actually never wrote, but likely will write an article that was like 50 ways. I would just compile it in my head, 50 ways to say I don't know and be okay with it because we are asked to be with such great certainty. And that can actually at times create in us self-judgment around I don't know and I'm unclear. And there sometimes needs to be spaciousness with that space, being able to sit in the I don't know and the discomfort is where wisdom can be generated. So not the final stage, but the next stage that became my no stage came then following that, but really beginning in the last 2 years since working on sexuality work. Meanwhile, the no side of me has actually been very well at work over the years, considering that the situations that I wrote down with my no's were young. Middle school was the first one. I was someone who was calling out teachers. I went to the principal's office and I was like, I'm not going to this teacher's class. And the teacher was like, why not? And I was like, she doesn't know how to teach. They ended up doing an evaluation on her and she got fired. And then one of my yes moments was writing an entire essay to my teachers advocating for why we should go ice skating and how it had to do with every single subject. And one of my teachers saying, are you going to be a lawyer one day? I'm not a lawyer yet. Don't necessarily plan to be, but that is the level of energy that I have around advocating for joy. So, why this information on yeses and nos? Why is that where we're starting with creative revolution? That's so basic. The reason we're starting with yeses and nos is because we're talking about activating intuition here. We're talking about activating the intelligence and wisdom of the body. We're talking about activating the intelligence of your field or your energy or your consciousness. We're talking about engaging with more of the mystery of life that is speaking to you in the language that you speak. And what I mean by that is potentially all these yeses, nos, and maybes, potentially that's not where you've had some interaction with your guidance system. Potentially you've had it through dreams. Potentially you've had it through words spoken to you by strangers and synchronicities. Potentially you've had it through religious writing, in which case you might have a harder time hearing what I'm talking about, because I, for myself, had a very strong relationship to religious writing, and with that religious conditioning, that religious writing has hierarchy over my own thoughts, which means that we should fear and find issue with self-proclaimed things. You might have some of your greatest guidance through journeys and adventures that you've gone on, life experience. You might be more tactical and practical and physical. And I'll just pause there, but that's what I'm speaking to right now. The activation of the language that speaks to you, that moves you, that moves the needle on your life. We cannot have creative revolution, and I can define what I mean by creative revolution, but it's my belief we cannot have creative revolution without activating the teacher in us. And the teacher in us is our own guidance system. So I really feel like I'm done. I don't feel like there's that much more to say here. But I will give some context to this, and I will give some vision as to why it's important that I speak this now, because the work I want to do, let's rewind to joy. Joy, 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 joy. Take it back. I had a conversation last night with someone, and we were talking about despairing in the current social political system. And I said, I'm not giving it my despair. It can't have it. It can have my grief. It can have my sadness, but it doesn't get my despair. That is reserved. And that's ultimately what we're talking about here. We're talking about fundamentally operating from joy. A joy that is so deep that it doesn't mean happiness and it doesn't mean even toned and it doesn't mean freedom from mourning, but it does mean a quality of peace, trust, and knowing of prosperity. That is what I am working with. That is what calls me. That is what guides me. I'm going to pause and just notice whether there's anything more to say or whether that's enough right now. All right. So let's point it back to you again because you are listening to me. I'm connecting with you. We are connected virtually. I have frustration. Libby, the human, has frustration that I'm connecting with you in this way virtually. I want to be in circle. I want to be in connection. I want to be in nature. I want these trees right here. I want a lot of things. Trusting that want is part of trusting my guidance system. Trusting that annoyance, that like discomfort. This is not it. I'm not staying here is part of my guidance system. Being grounded in joy in the midst is part of my guidance system. Feeling my soreness in my back because I worked out, because I'm working on my handstands right now is part of my guidance system. My guidance system has shown me and taught me that every part of this experience gets to be acknowledged, and I have choice over what I center and what I choose to embrace and allow to nurture me the direction that I want to go. What is your internal guidance system teaching you? What direction is your internal guidance system leading you on? Perhaps your internal guidance system has heard me start talking about joy and it's resonated with it. And it's thought, oh my gosh, I've known that's true. I know there's a way to operate from joy in this world, regardless of what the philosophy is, regardless of needing to know how, regardless of the quality of pain that I'm in. And perhaps your internal guidance system heard me speaking about joy and was like, you clearly are not witnessing what is happening in the world right now. You clearly are delusional and have access to that joy because of the privileges that have afforded you access to the elements which allow you to be hydrated, be well fed, be well slept, have community, and be able to breathe the air. You're not going to feel that much joy when the air you breathe shift because of the environmental issues that we have created as humans that are okay. That's Libby the human. um, Whatever spectrum of reaction that you've had to me speaking, I invite you to consider that this guidance has something for you, has some message for you. And that the more important thing than what I'm saying is what your guidance system wants to lead you to. This is so important to my work because Seeds of Elegance is a platform where I'm going to continue to give voice to people who have different kinds of authorities, sets of information, sets of guidance that is not going to resonate for all people. And Libby's internal guidance system has a lot to do with community, connection, unity, family. So there's a certain point when I have another part of my, or it's more my human brain that says, uh-oh, what if I put out work that offends some people? Actually, there's zero way to avoid that. And so I have to come back in touch with the deepest guidance that I have and exercise discernment. When is what I'm doing in service of the deepest path that I chose, that I am choosing, that I want to engage on? And when is my discernment helping forge that path? And when is that what I'm perceiving as discernment or wisdom? When is that really self-judgment, perfectionism, fear, and self-doubt? These types of questions are questions that I get to ask myself, and I get to grapple with trusted people who share shared visions with me. I share all this because this is a shift in what holds authority. So while it might seem like, why does it matter? The parts of me that say no, the parts of me that say yes, the parts of me that say I don't know. Why does it matter, my internal guidance system? It matters because the transitions that we're undergoing as a world and within our bodies, minds, and spirits, if we wanted, is so dramatic. And we, in my experience, are being empowered and invited to trust ourselves at a level that it's hard for me to say it hasn't been possible, but in some ways hasn't been possible. There's a spiritual teacher called Carolyn Miss, and she speaks about the history of empowerment. I should add this to my list of things that have inspired creative revolution. And she says empowerment is still a relatively new term because we have not needed to be empowered as individuals outside of the group until this point in history. Until this point of history, it has been, where is the group going? What is the group doing? What is the group? How do I survive through the group? We need the group, we need the group, we need the group. And now we are in a time where our individual thoughts, ideas, beliefs matter. And we get to go on these very personal journeys. So I want to speak to the revolution side. What, what are you talking about, revolution? Revolution, I'm going to make it very simple. This comes from the I Ching and the gene keys, which are an ancient archetypal system, another space of archetypes. Archetypes are like choosing to see the Avengers, the different systems, different ways of being as humans, seeing them in ourselves. I say the Avengers because we're obsessed with superhero movies at this moment in history. And superhero movies, they show an embodiment of teamwork and differentiation. And the beauty of differentiation and unity. Differentiation and unity. We don't want the Hulk to be Black Widow, to be Spider-Man, to be Wolverine. I know I'm mixing comics here. But when they work together, they become a unit. Something new emerges, synergy, power. That is what my work is about. Power, love, and individuation, differentiation. So let's take a deep breath there. The I Ching, the gene keys, these archetypal systems that help us start to think about the different powers that we contain as humans. And with that, not just the powers, but the shadows, the challenges. One of these challenges is the 49th gene key. There's 64. And the 49th is one that we are said to be collectively moving through as humans. There's two that are very important to this stage collectively as humans. One is Gene Key 55, which is about freedom, from moving from victimization to freedom. And the other is moving from reaction to revolution, to rebirth. Whether or not you identify with this system, there is a way that you can do some examination into the time that you were born and look at certain archetypes that might be more alive, that were present on the earth at that time, and so might be running more through your system. So for me, one of the keys that is more prominent for me is Gene Key 49. The 49th key is about revolution and rebirth. And revolution can be defined as cultural, personal, social change and transformation. And what I love in the I Ching, which is the ancient Chinese system, looks at these issues a little bit more in a collective way, and the Gene Keys looks at them a little bit more in a personal way. What the Gene Keys talks about with revolution is that it's a discernment around what is needed and what is no longer needed. What is needed and what is no longer needed. What is needed and what is no longer needed. And for many years, I have been on a path of examining what is needed and what is no longer needed. This is something you can only answer when you have clarity about where you're going. Because if I'm going to move into a mansion, I'm gonna pack all my bags. But if I'm going to move into a studio apartment in New York City, I'm gonna pack a backpack and not much more. If I'm going to be traveling around the world with a single backpack, I'm going to pack a different amount of things than if I'm going on a cruise ship. So, where are we going? What are we taking with us? Is a question that is both a living question on this earth right now because things are radically changing, and it's also a spiritual question when it comes to how you view this life and what you actually need or want in this life. So, creative revolution is this invitation on both hands. On the one hand, creative revolution is an invitation into your, well, let's go 3 levels here. The personal, what do I personally need and what am I ready to release? Where am I going? The social, where are we collectively going and what do we need? And the spiritual, what am I doing here? Where am I going? What do I need? To answer those questions, the personal, the social, and the spiritual, you're going to need your guidance system. We are alive. It's my belief that we are alive at a time where so many of us are differentiating at the same time while there's still extraordinary power that's seeking our oppression, not just through systems like patriarchy, colonization, sexism, racism, white supremacy, things that formally keep us locked into patterns to keep certain people in power and others in without power. Not just that, but oppression of mind, oppression of consciousness. Stay quiet, stay undiscerning, stay in agreement. In agreement. One of my mentors always talks about be a good citizen and a good worker and a good wife. All the goods, be a good girl, right? All the goods keep us saying, I don't want to break that. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Okay. So we are moving through a stage from my vantage point where we are both coming alive to who we are, coming alive to our power, coming alive to our discernment, personal and collective. And at the same time, where people who are in power do not want to give up that power and are doing their best to enforce and push their ideas about control, greed, ownership, etc. And so as we awaken, one of the things that we tend to do, many of us, is we take the exact tools that were used to keep us locked and attempt to free others with those tools. And there's a famous quote, you can't dismantle. Let's just pull it up right now. A little Audre Lorde here. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. And this fact is only threatening to those women who still define the master's house as their only source of support. So you can imagine, for those of us in Stockholm syndrome right now, coming out of oppression, coming out of, again, mental oppression too, not just formal systems of oppression, although they're all connected. We might think that the house that we're in, the current social structure that we're in, the current way we're operating in the mind body, the current way we perceive our experience on this earth is the house. It is the house. Don't shake it. Don't make me change. And then one part of us starts waking up and we want to then now fight or expand or um, push or force change on another person in their personal life, within our collective, or toward the parts of ourselves who don't feel ready to change. That's what I would add in the spiritual journey. We put this ridiculous standard that, like, if you've had any kind of spiritual awakening, you must now be at ease and at peace and in love. And then you still have the shadows and the human and the ego who's like, I don't want to change. Why are you making me change? I don't really fucking care that there might be something else outside of this current experience. This is what I'm going through now. So what it's going to look like to dismantle the house, I personally believe we have different roles in. Some of us are going to be engaged in active social political change. Some of us are going to be engaged in nurturing a new culture so that we're not just pushing, throwing, shoving, or creating a violent revolution with nothing to overtake it. We have to actually be the people who are ready and embracing and living into the new model, the new way of life outside of power over paradigms now. On the personal level, we're not just going to be eliminating, if you've ever moved houses, if you've ever gone through divorce, if you ever left your family, if you ever left a religion, it's not just it's not just cutting a cord, it's not just moving, it's also creating infrastructure in yourself that allows you to step into who you are becoming now. And on the spiritual side, it's not just enlightenment, out of body, psychedelic experience, prayer, church, God, out of this, pretend I'm not in a body. It's inviting in, opening toward, opening the heart, opening up to light, connecting to here, being connected to others, seeing that our connection with one another. A spirituality that is embodied and living. There's questions involved. We're at different stages. We don't need to be shaming each other. And that is the place where activating our own teacher comes back in. So I asked you at the beginning of this call, wherever you're at now, let's pause for a minute. Maybe also just note for yourself, when I'm speaking, what's most attractive to you? Personal change, social change, or spiritual change? What realm? There's more realms and dimensions, but that's what I'm bringing to the table here. Do you like working more on the individual level, the psyche, your own personal change? Do you like working more on the social, on family, on systems? Do you like working more on the spiritual? Okay. So now, let me note that. Okay. I like all of them. That's why I'm sometimes overwhelmed in myself. Now go back to the beginning of the call and to the points on your paper where I asked you to write about a time you had discernment. Is there a place you're being asked to have discernment right now in your life that you don't view it as an option? Because this is what creative revolution is about. There are more options available to us than we could possibly know, and yet we are confining ourselves to options that we think are here. So while creative revolution began with, like, really was activated in me through my brother's death in 2019, and while it was amplified through my study of sexuality work and reprocessing my life through a somatic lens, there was another place where it was deeply activated. And it was at the age of 22, sitting in an apartment in Washington, D.C., determining, am I going to work for the government or am I going to move to California? That was what the option felt like. Am I going to work more in politics or am I going to work more in innovation? And I drew a third box and I said, what if it wasn't an either or, but there was a third choice? And for that whole year, the framework that I used was called the third entity. I just made that up now. I hear that all the time in non-duality and spiritual thinking. But at the time, I just called it the philosophy that I was working with, the third entity. It was grappling with and pushing against my perception and my belief that there's two options. And every time that I perceive there is two, to consider that there's a third. So that's why I ask you right now, are you at a choice point that you don't perceive as a choice point, that you think I have to do it like this? Or are you at a choice point where you think there's only two? Are you at a choice point where you think those two things are opposites? Because I will poke on all of those for a minute. But before I do that, I want you to just reach out your hands and give yourself a giant hug. Because remember, we came here for joy. Reach out and bring it in. Thank you. 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 There's an article right now, if you visit creativerevolution.substack.com, that compiles the different types of studies that I've been in, personal, social, and spiritual, that have led to my beliefs about creative revolution. But I want to just share a couple of images. One, I'm standing on a bridge, on an overpass, actually, in Queens, New York, as a 6-year-old, the day of 9/11. And I'm dropping a hair clip. It's a Hello Kitty hair clip. I don't know why I remember that, but I remember dropping the hair clip down into the traffic, seeing it go down and looking up and seeing the smoke. My sister walked with me with my other sister to go watch the smoke. My father tucked us in that night, and my sister, who's 2 years older than me, said, but everyone got out okay, right? This memory, and actually also standing in the classroom and beginning to hear the teachers talk about planes, 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 and my friend's mom coming and picking us up from school and saying, we were like, what happened? The teachers wouldn't tell us. And her saying, there's 2 planes and they flew into the Twin Towers. Being raised in New York City and being 6 years old when the Twin Towers were hit, potentially I already had an awakeness and curiosity about the world, but this for me was an activator of why were things the way they were, and what is the history here? I don't think a 6-year-old was asking what is the history, but that is the question that continued to be nurtured in my system. From that time, from when I was a kid, I had many dreams about World War III. Now let's fast forward for a minute. I'm 13. I have a dream about my brother. No, actually, it was my sister in the dream. My sister dying. And I was in my middle school in the dream. And there was articles out, family of 12. My brother, who was just born, had just completed our family to be a family of 12. We had just become the dozen. And there was just an article in the newspaper about us, about how we were this cheaper by the dozen in New York City. And just a little while after the 12th child was born, I'm number 7, I have this dream where a different article was out and it said the family of 12 broken up. The dream was so dramatic, so vivid, so intense that when I woke up, I couldn't believe that I was alive. And I grasped onto my bed to just check. I remember just wanting to check. And that same sister who had been with me back in 9/11, asking my dad, but everyone got out okay, was with me in the room. And I started sobbing. And she was like, Libby, what's going on? It was like 6 a.m. And I just came down and I got into bed with her. And I told her, I had a dream, one of us died. And she said, okay, just let's go back to sleep. For the next couple of days, I was afraid to go to sleep. The intensity of that moment was so big, and I didn't know where else I could travel to in my dreams. I never had a dream like that again. But I had a couple of days later where a good friend of mine in a park saw me zone out. And she said to me, Libby, where'd you go? You're not here. And when I reconnected from the dissociation, I had some guidance at that moment. Trust, do not worry about this now. I share about those two moments because if my brother hadn't died 10 years later, I wouldn't have been as interested in the World War III dreams. Even though I was always interested, I continued to stay interested in politics and social change. I wouldn't have taken those nightmares as a kid as seriously. But it was through the loss of my brother, which not only activated a lot in my mental health, but also activated awareness of this guidance system that led me to begin examining and taking seriously my dreams as a child throughout the 6 years as we're coming upon of my brother's death. Let's fast forward to the age of 22, traveling around the world and beginning to study yoga and beginning to study meditation. A specific night, waking up after the Parkland shooting in Florida, I believe. Let's just make sure that's accurate. Yeah. 2018. I continued to be alive at a time where mass shootings were growing. And I was out of the country at the time that the mass shooting at a concert in Texas happened. I was in Japan and then in India when the Parkland shooting happened. And I began to grapple with the state of violence within the US, and as I also traveled the world, because the state of violence in the US feels even more confusing outside of it. And I remember watching images of it on TV at this Indian airport, just being like, wow, this is what we look like. And having some conversations with a good friend there about whether we have the capacity to break the cycles of karma. I was someone who was raised religious, so I've been in Christianity, so I've been more in a state of mind of Christ will come and break this cycles of sin, but ultimately those cycles will be broken in the next world. And within Eastern philosophy, well, the language of sin is not present, the language of karma is more present. And so we were having still, even though in college I went through a type of awakening where I began to no longer see sin as sin, but as choice, that we have access to choice as humans. Here I was now studying from a framework that had a different superstition. I will use the word superstition to mean a myth that we perpetrate that may or may not have roots in reality. It may be just a way that we talk about our consciousness. So sin is one myth that we use to discuss the parts of our consciousness that are conflicting with our relationship with our body, and karma is another. And we were in these conversations, students were protesting at a level that hadn't happened. And one of my friends was saying, you can protest all you want, it's not going to change. These cycles don't change. These are the cycles of violence. This is how things are. And just a mirror into waking up and having panic and having anxiety as I began to grapple with Christ and the truths that are within the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the yogic teachings. Fast forward to my brother's death, and I'm in San Francisco, and it's a couple months after I'm listening to that podcast on speaking no's, and I'm like, I don't want to be in that energy. I don't want to be in that energy of so many no's. And it's the day that I find out that my brother died, and I just taught a fitness class the day before. I just went to Yosemite the weekend before. I've been in one of the greatest highs that I've been in. I'm working next to the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm working for the COO at a little startup. There's so much connection that's happening in my life. I also feel unstable internally, but there's a lot of outward movement. I have a ticket to Costa Rica for May 14th. And it's May 15th. And it's May 14th, and I'm waking up to this call. And that day I get in the shower and I curse the shower. I remember looking at the water droplets and looking at my body and just thinking, this is stupid. All this thought, all this examination into spirituality only to experience this. He's gone. There's no access to him. I'm done. This is it. Now, I don't personally want to detail the next 6 years in this video, but I want to share these stories about death, sexuality. Well, I didn't really share that much about sexuality, but I'll just say, to fast forward, being with my brother's body and beginning to really holding my brother's body and beginning to question what it is that I'm meant to do in this body, in this earth. Not just see spirituality as something outside of me, or life is something outside of me, but life is something happening here within this being. War, violence, religion, spirituality, working across cultures, mental health. My brother was diagnosed with bipolar 6 weeks before his passing. I bring up all of these to ask your guidance system now what it's remembering. I wouldn't have regarded my dream state as a guidance system. I would have just regarded that as something that is alternate reality. But my dream state guided me to a future, and it also prepared me to begin to work on peace building. I wouldn't have known. I was raised to believe that Jesus was a guide, but I was not raised to believe that yoga was a guide, that meditation was a guide. And it was after my brother's death that Christ and Buddha came to me and comforted me. It was also after that time that my brother came to through a dream, and comforted me. I would not have thought of my body as a guidance system. But learning how to speak to and communicate with my body created the no's in my system that have led to creative revolution now being birthed through me. And if you look at the Seeds of Elegance interviews, there's a gap from March of last year, 2025, to March of this year, or February of this year, 2024 to 2025. And that gap began a year ago. Today is March 26th, the day my brother would have been 27. He died. He took his life 6 weeks after turning 21. So every time this period begins for me over the last 5 years, there has been so much sadness in my system. because there's so much love. And I wasn't present for that time. I was living in California. It's so humbling. So that's what I bring, joy and pain. Pain is so humbling. That is what this whole experience has taught me, that we are being guided, that we each have something to offer, that the timelines are so beyond us, that our stories are so connected, that there's so much beauty, that there's so much more of us that gets to exist here. There's so much more of your guidance system that is available to you. There's so many layers that can be worked on. And I also share this as someone who has an interest in the personal, the social, and the spiritual, because there's a temptation, because I've worked in each realm and I've had revelation and opening and expansion and pain in each realm, but to varying degrees. The pain I felt on the social political as a white American woman is way less than someone who has been under and held down at the neck from caste systems, from racial systems, and even from patriarchy and sexism. I'm one of the wealthiest people on this planet by being born in this country. There is not the same type of cast on me as a woman as there are in majority parts of the world. So my suffering on the social political is less than my suffering on the mental, personal level, and also on the spiritual level. But my experience of suffering on the spiritual level and on the personal have brought such an amount of pain for me that has humbled me and made me aware of greater joy that I want to be connected to for survival and for thriving. And it's my belief that we do not all have access to the same suffering or the same joy. And that's important. What we get to do is be attuned to our guidance system. So I come back to no judgment, no shame. I actually want to bring in the language that comes from The Art of Co-Devotional Love by Johann Erb and Rachel Pringle. No guilt, no shame, no blame, no projection. No guilt, no shame, no blame, no projection. No guilt, no blame, no shame, no projection. The more that we know who we are, the more that we know what our guidance system is moving us toward and away from, the more we can say with clarity, yes, no, maybe, the more we can find support in this spine, in this being, the more we can trust what we are here for, the more we can release what is not ours, what is not for us, and be okay with that, the more we can actually attract in and welcome those other Avengers who will be on our team. There will be many Avenger teams. This is my belief. There will be many types of work. We are not in scarcity. We are not in scarcity of love. We are not in scarcity of joy. We are not in scarcity of abundance. We have created systems that reflect scarcity of our ancestors. We are alive at a time where we can make new choices, where we are being invited to be discerning about what we need. And that requires a personal discernment. So for those of us who are coming out of religious and spiritual framework, out of even social political framework, economic frameworks, financial frameworks that speak to a right way to do it, it feels very uncomfortable to find our own individual path and say, I actually get to discern and trust that I am part of a collective journey still. And some of us will be those of us who are here to lead the collective in different ways. And some of us will be here to live very, very personal or distinct journeys. No matter which direction you're in, please open to a way of doing it free of guilt, shame, blame, and projection. Being free of guilt, shame, blame, and projection does not mean you don't hold standards, you don't hold boundaries, or you don't have desires or ambitions. It actually means even more. You can own your needs, your desires, your ambitions, what you're here to do, what your connection is with others. And there can be spaciousness and understanding that we are not here for the same things. That's okay. We can hold a both and, just like that cylinder reflecting a square and reflecting a circle. We can hold a both and, that we are both here for a connected collective journey, and we are here for a personal journey. We can call back our energy for ourselves and ask for discernment. For those of us who are in the space of collaboration, collective change, collective governance, renewal of systems, we can find each other, learn how to work with each other free of guilt, blame, shame, and projection. For those of us who need freedom from certain kinds of struggle because we have already come through ancestral lineage involving war, isolation, pain, suffering, and we require freedom from working on that in this lifetime. May there be permission for that. May there be permission. May you receive the permission to work on and welcome and play with love and abundance and peace and prosperity that you are here for. These are not opposites. The path of justice is not opposite from the path of prosperity. The path of peace is not opposite from the path of rupture. We get to say yes to the path we are being guided on. And the last thing that I'll add is paradox and contradiction are going to be a part of the journey. We are artists, we are creators, we are not just thinkers. We are not just brains. Creative revolution is a reminder of the artist in us. It's an activator of the artist within our collective that has been suppressed, because we're not just talking about the oppression of the feminine. We're not just talking about oppression of Black and brown life on this earth. We are not just talking about the oppression of and destruction of nature. We're also talking about the oppression and suppression and repression of parts of ourself. We're talking about we're not just talking about wars on the earth and continuing to live into patterns of greed and destruction and power over. We are talking about power over within this, failure to integrate, neglect to integrate, abandonment to integrate within this. War is happening here. Some of us will be guiding the internal. Some of us will be guiding the collective. Let's not make ourselves at war with each other. You have freedom to leave your church, your religion, and stay with God. You have freedom to leave your social change effort and still be connected to social transformation. You have freedom to join hands with others and leave the individualistic models that you've been working in. You have freedom to welcome and receive the sun. You have freedom to say yes to larger structural change. You have freedom to build your own path that invites others. You have freedom to have a job and career that provides for you so that your own personal experience with God can be open and amplified. You have freedom to be single. You have freedom to be married. You have freedom to be divorced. You have freedom to take your time with death. You have freedom to call upon our collective and call in our collective to move differently with death. We are recovering pieces of ourselves that have been neglected. And we are acknowledging the trauma and the systems that have continued to neglect, perpetrate, and reduce any form of system, people, indigenous groups, cultures, religions that have sought for a more integrated, whole, and connected way of being that we've collectively pushed down to promote the power over systems that are dominating now. Finally, the power over systems that are dominating now are not the end of the story. We are in a turning moment in history. We are not at the end of the story, we are at the beginning. We don't have to ignore the possibilities that exist for great destruction, and we don't have to ignore the amount of pain that's going to be generated through the neglect happening from certain choices being made now on the earth. And the pain will be portal. The pain is humbling. There will be those of us who are here to be in the gray, and there's those of us who are here to see the black and white and push us and support us in the push through. We both get to be here. There are those of us who will teach us how to sit in silence. There are those of us who will teach us how to find our voice. There are those of us who will teach us the powers of rationality. There are those of us who will teach us the powers of standing firm on our 2 feet. There are those of us who will teach us the power of celibacy and of freedom from desire. There will be those of us who activate the sacral and welcome the most beautiful, sacred, renewed relationship to sexuality. As someone spoke to me yesterday, the sacred and profane will get to be here. The integration of both will be here. The greatest trauma is not behind us, but neither is the greatest love. Finally, our consciousness evolves and builds. Both ands exist on such extraordinary levels. The version of me who the December after Dan died was desperate to also join that path and has prayed for years for freedom from the mental struggle that I am in by any means possible, exists and may continue to exist in this lifetime. It's a quality of suffering that I've chosen to see. And the Libbies who think infinitely and to the edge of the earth also exist. And I stay open to their evolution. I stay open to their integration. And I stay open to what I am made to experience here, because my life is not just about me. Thank you that it's not just about me. Thank you that this revolution is beyond us. Thank you that the other side of revolution is rebirth, and rebirth is not a one moment thing. The 4 points that I have here was internal guidance, Dan's death, community, and joy. So I want to just speak to the joy and the sadness. Loving Dan taught me about how big love is, and I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful. It is truly an amazing thing to love someone so much that you want to die. Without them, I didn't know you could feel that. It's such an amazing thing to have 3 baby girls be born the year after Dan died. 2 biological nieces for me and 1 like a niece. And for them to be 6 years old this year, 5 years old, 5 years because they were born the year after. 3 little girls right now turning 5 this year. And it doesn't take away. The love that I have for each of them doesn't take away the love that I have for him. The heart opens and it opens and it opens. Creative revolution is about that heart opening process. It's about our individuality, it's about our power, it's about the transformation of all things. And fundamentally, it is about reactivating the guidance that you have in whatever way. Because the guidance also comes from me in art, it also comes from me in the creative process. The one thing is extremely central for me in my work. The guidance comes when we take action in alignment with it. So long as we say no to the guidance itself, more and more of this monkey mind gets activated. More and more distrust in ourselves gets activated. And instead of having steadiness, we shake, we waver. And in that shaking and wavering, we need others' validation. We need others' support. And so I want to speak to one thing here. There's a beautiful line from my divorce coach right now, because I am in a divorce with a lot of things. I was not seeking a divorce guide, but my internal guidance system led me to one, and she is an amazing guide, Imani Nick, and she has offered the relationship between boundaries and standards. Boundaries are like a tree growing, and they are the support that we literally put when the tree is still growing. Standards are how we choose to operate once that tree has stability. We are at a time right now where many of us need boundaries in different ways, and where those of us who have been able to establish boundaries or have had the privilege or spaciousness to have our boundaries respected more have the opportunity to develop standards. And it's easy to judge each other. We do not all have the same path here. Continue to listen to the boundaries that you need and call in our collective to regard and respect dignity for all beings, honor for all beings, safety for all beings, love for all beings, protection for all beings. And every human gets to have a standard based on where they are being guided to. Again, there's an article on my Substack, creativerevolution.substack.com, where you can see different studies in trauma healing, in sexuality work, in manifestation, the mind, human design, gene keys, mental health work, and in human consciousness, heart opening, historical study, social change study that has led me to the path that I am saying yes to. But I invite you first and foremost into the play. Ugh. I don't want all the scratches and the itches and the hair playing. Okay, that's the human in me that's like, ugh, I'm uncomfortable. It is fucking uncomfortable. We're talking about a lot of fucking changes and a lot of places where it feels like we have choice. It doesn't feel like we have choice. We might actually have choice. We might not. Paradox and contradiction. Paradox and contradiction. But what happens when you start doing this? When you actually start to see the patterns, see the options, observe, question, observe, observe, question, observe, is that an entry point comes. And that's when something opens. And that's when you can start taking aligned action. And that's when you can come into trust in the body. And that's when living starts to feel unapologetically good. Not freedom from pain, not freedom from struggle, not freedom from challenge, but freedom from fighting and warring with yourself and us. You did not come to war with us. You came to work with us. to love us, to guide us, to learn, to grow, to unlearn, to create, to play. Thank you for receiving me. I feel vulnerable. I feel scared sometimes. I feel sad. And I feel excitement, joy, gratitude, persistence, peace, connection. I choose to cultivate the joy. I choose to accept and welcome the other pieces. I believe in strength. And to bring in one final thing, because when I first wrote Seeds of Elegance, I said, greater trust is possible. Greater trust is possible. That's an article on my Medium, libhoff.medium.com. Not trying to overly promote myself, but also I like writing more than I like speaking right now. I wrote, greater trust is possible. And I love what one of my collaborators said today. The thing about the trust is you just got to trust it. And in November, so one last thing I'll add. Thank you. It's receiving, letting yourself receive. What happened for me right now is I actually just saw something that is a sign for me in my own guidance system. And the more you start to notice, the more that you can actually take in. It is safe. It is safe. Thank you. Thank you. I got interrupted there. I forgot what I was gonna say, and I'm not gonna edit this video. I don't know what I was gonna say, but I just want to speak to trust. There's a system right now called human design, and human design calls itself an experiment, the human design experiment. You get to test it, you get to see. This is such a beautiful way of inviting us to play with the trust. And, uh, oh yeah, we started with so much joy. I just want to speak to the sadness too. It is hard to be alive at a time. It feels hard. I wanted to share some of how I feel on the other side and how we can contain them both. The same system can know, and the same system can know joy. And the more the heart opens, the more joy at times, the more sadness. So the image I want to give is like seeing to the ends of the earth. Look out and see as far as you can see. Cute. I'm sober in this video, by the way. When you learn to say yes, when you learn to say yes to more, you can just let things speak through you, speak to you. Yeah. And I'm a very high emotion and high energy person. But I just want to give this vision. When you can see until the ends of the earth, you can have the courage to do anything. Always see that. Always see that too. The sun is so bright on my face. That's what I want to close in. The thank you. Every time I look up and I see that it's March 26th, thank you. That's the thank you helps me remember I'm being guided. It's okay. It's okay. That's the internal guidance system. Where are you being guided? If you cannot feel your guidance system at all, come back into gratitude. Allow yourself to start to receive where you are being guided right in this moment. I'll share with two more images for just being able to see, even when you're feeling what you feel, and notice what you're noticing. Present moment experience, collective experience, spiritual experience, ancestral experience. We are coming through a lot of things. When I had the dream a month after my brother died, where he came and comforted me, which is, by the way, not an I don't personally right now operate from a state where I think too much about the afterlife or anything like that, and I don't feel connected to love that frequently at this moment of my life. But I have a lot of trust. I feel the trust. I feel that the more the human design experiment, the more experiment, the more it comes, the more I trust, the more trust is. The image, the dream that I had after his passing showed a portal, a tomb that led just out, past where I could see. And this is the same image that I have when I picture our future. When I picture my future, I picture a horizon that I cannot see the end of. This allows me to be able to be right here too. I'm not disconnecting. We don't need to disconnect from what is here. And to be able to move mountains with our words, we get to see the destination. The more that we can see that destination of beauty, of trust, of connection, of truth, of knowing, of certainty, the more we can see that future of trust, of truth, of connection, of certainty, and see this moment, this version, this experience. I am not an enlightened being. I am not someone here to guide you. I am asking you to witness my relationship with my internal guidance system, to listen to how I guided myself in this hour, to listen to how my system is able to support me, to hold the sadness, to know the joy, to see a way forward, to see right now, to welcome mourning, to welcome truth, to welcome support, to receive, to be open to receiving, while being grounded, while taking action, while inviting in. It's not an either or. Thank you for considering the disruptive path that guides you home. Thank you for allowing yourself to be confused. Confusion is so important. Clarity is so beautiful. And confusion is also important, I believe. Confusion up here points to finding clarity in here, in intuition, in belly, in solar plexus, in roots, in sacral. Thank you for imagining something different and choosing to feel what is now. This spring, I'll be opening up 3 circles where I'll work with people just a small group, 3 at a time, on our vitality, on intimacy, and on what I call generativity or our life work. There's opportunities to be supported. There's opportunities to be in touch with the subconscious. I have a whole list of practitioners constantly growing around me. This is beyond woo-woo work and science. This is beyond social political change and energetic internal work. This is the third entity. This is the oneness path. This is listening to your guidance system, because no teacher alone, no human alone, no lover alone, no partner alone, no friend alone will be able to speak these words to you that you need to hear. Not even my words. My words are not all for you. And as you know yours, and as I know mine, then the type of conversation we're going to have is going to be so different. And if you've ever been in some of these conversations, they can be sometimes very electric, with a lot of knowing and alignment and peace, like you're meeting an old friend, even when you're just meeting them the first time. And they can also be confusing, uncomfortable, like you're talking over each other, like you don't know how to meet because you're no longer using all the expected lingo that you've been taught to use, whether you were coming from the political map or the spiritual map or this ex-religious map or this new age map. We're building a new map with our words. We're building a new map with our language. We're building a new map with our bodies. We're building a new map with the way we treat each other, with the systems itself. And we also can go get ice cream and go get a milkshake and go get food. And the regular life is going to be here. And right here in this, God is. You are. We are. I might come back to this years later and view it completely differently. And this is who I am now, and I respect it, and I honor it, and I love it. Much love, much magic to you. May joy guide you. May remembrance be here. May your suffering be eased. May comfort come around you. May power be known through this body. May all pain that wants to be alchemized through you be so. May it be so, may it be so, may it be so.